developing a web page, inevitably you're going to run into problems and you're going to have to fix errors in some of the code that you've written. So how do we begin fixing the problems that we have? Well, what I do is I bookmark a couple of things and I refer to them all the time as I'm developing a page. The first one is going to be the reference guide. The reference guide is going to tell you how to build things. It has a ton of tools that we can use, including these two here for HTML and CSS. And let's take a look at that and see what it can do for us. So if you go to w3schools.com, there is this drop-down menu for all kinds of references. The first one that we're going to explore in this class is the HTML tag reference. So this shows me a list of all the different elements in a page. For instance, let me take a look at this A tag. It defines a hyperlink. That's what it does. So this is what I'm going to use to make links. So if I click on A, it'll first show me an example, and then it's going to show me how it's used, what kind of browsers support it, and just about every major browser supports this. And then it's going to tell me about attributes. See, an attribute is something that is like, consider it like a setting that you can, or a property that you can set on this particular element. For instance, this href specifies the URL, so that's the address of a website or something. Or target specifies where to open the link, so I could click on it and maybe I wanted to open up a brand new window. And then if I kept scrolling down, there's some stuff that it'll show me examples of how to style it and make it look nice. So that's done with CSS. So that's the HTML tag reference. So I found that under references, HTML tag reference. There's also an event reference and a color reference. Another popular spot that we'll go to is the CSS reference. So if I click on that, the first thing it's going to show me is a bunch of groupings of related styles. Like for instance, if I'm talking about color or backgrounds or tables or animation, I can quickly click on those and it'll send me to different properties that I can set. So each property then would also have a value to it. For instance, a color could be red, or a color could also have a hexadecimal value or an RGB. So 3 different ways to set it. And every one of these different properties is going to have a different way of setting it. And all I have to do is click on these things. For instance, I'll click on background image and it'll show me an example. But it's important that I should point out that I've had students before that just look at the example, but they don't read any of the documentation down here. Don't fall into that trap, because it'll tell you down here additional important information about different values that you can set on these properties. Okay, so that's the CSS reference. And then finally, HTML DOM reference. So the DOM reference is going to look at the document object model and how to access different elements. So I'm going to go ahead and click on DOM elements. And here is a whole bunch of things, different actions that I can take upon different HTML tags. So for instance, I'm going to find one here that I use quite a bit. I could use get elements by class name. So that's going to give me a collection of all related elements that have a certain class name attached to them. I could get all elements by a tag name. So those are a couple of ones that I might look at, and then I would say, oh, here's an example of how to use it. And then I might look at the usage, syntax involved, It gives you some more examples that you can work through. Okay, so this is just a reference guide. It's a good place to start and get yourself accustomed to how things are supposed to be done. But let's pretend that we've got this web page built. All right, so this is what this web page looks like, but this is not the code inside of it. All right, so let's take a look at the code that built it. All right, it's very simple. It's relatively short. We have a doc type declaration that says that it's an HTML5 document. So this is the doc type declaration for an HTML5 document. This is where the HTML begins, and down here is where it ends. Next up, this is the head section, and in the head section we declare the character encoding. We gave it a page title, and there's some styles in here. Now, I'm going to save the styles for a little bit, but I'll let you peek at it right now. I have a couple of styles on this page that align things into the middle and stuff, and you don't have to fully understand this yet because we'll get into CSS later on. The purpose of this video is to talk about how to fix things, so I'm going to keep it to that. Down here is the body section, and the body has everything that's going to be displayed on the page. So I have this div tag that acts like a container. It's going to contain all of the stuff that we're going to center, such as a heading, a paragraph, a link, a quote, and an image. So those are all the elements, and then down here I have some JavaScript. So this is my JavaScript section, and again, just like the CSS above, you don't have to understand this yet. I'm just showing you how to fix things before you get into it. Okay, it's also important to point out that the things that are highlighted in different colors, the colors mean stuff here as well. For instance, anything in blue here represents an HTML element. For instance, head, meta, title, body, div, h1p, they all take on that color. If I accidentally don't do it right, for instance, I take out this E in meta, notice how the color changes to black. My editor here realizes that, hey, I don't know what MTA is. So that could be your first indication that you've made an error, is that the color doesn't pop on it the way it should. Next are the attributes. Attributes are going to be red at all times. So if it doesn't recognize the attribute as well, it might fade into a different color. So I took the A out of car set when it should be char set, which is character set. It's like an abbreviation for it. And then the value of these attributes should be purple. So purple refers to a value, red refers to an attribute, and blue refers to an element. So as I'm spot checking my page for errors, I'm looking at these colors as well, and as you do more of it, you'll start to realize, oh, hey, this should be a certain color and it's not. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save the page right now the way I have it, and then I'm going to validate this page. That means I'm going to have an external editor kind of proofread it for me. It goes through a process called parsing, which means it's trying to read the page, and it's going to output anything that it sees wrong. So where do I go see that? And then I usually use this validate by file upload tab. So it's going to come here first, but I'm going to go here, validate by file upload. And then under more options, I tend to use show source an awful lot. I like to see in the web page how the web page parsed it. So I'm going to put in my file name here and then click check. And what you want is what you see here. You want it to be green. You don't want any errors. So this is what our goal will be. Now let me break the page and fix a few problems. So the first thing is maybe I'll take out the character encoding just to produce an error. And let's say that I leave off the greater than sign and I misspell class here. All right, so I've just created an error on line 42. on line 46, and I've taken out the encoding on line 5. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to try to revalidate it, and it should tell me that I've made those errors. So I'm going to go back, recheck it, and here it's showing me that yes, my character encoding is not declared, and I need to put that in. Now, a browser, if you don't have a character encoding chosen, it's going to guess. And you really don't want the browser to have to guess because it could guess wrong. It also saw on line 44 that we were expecting to have something else, and the probable cause is that I was missing an end or a greater than symbol immediately before this line. Now, what I see a lot of students do sometimes is they see that the error was on line 44, but they don't read this, which says it was immediately before it. So what happens is they go to line 44 and they can't figure out what's wrong with this. And they miss the fact that it said immediately before this line, I should have had that. Okay, if I go back to that page, I had more errors down here, and that was because I misspelled class. All right, so as I go in here, what I might do is I'm going to not fix this yet. I'm going to save it and rerun the page because this missing could produce more errors in and of itself. So fixing that, I should go back, rerun the page, and now you can see I have less. So I must not have put that in. So let me go ahead and fix that as well. I should have meta car set equals UTF 8. Okay, save it and rerun the page. Alright, so now I have this attribute that's not allowed. It's not allowed because there is no such element as CLSS. So I have to put the A in there to fix this, and it's on line 46. So let me go ahead and go to line 46, fix that problem. And now if I save this and rerun it, I should be error-free. So I'm going to go ahead and check it. And yes, I've got nothing but green here. Green is good. That's what we want. Okay, so if I have a structural problem, this is where you should start. You should start with HTML and validate it. Now, you could still have some logical errors that exist, which means that you've got things perhaps arranged in the wrong way, but it still would validate. And that's something that you're going to have to do by previewing the page and just deciding, okay, I want things in a different spot. Or for perhaps the layout is all wrong. So, but as a designer, that's up to you. Okay, so another thing that could happen on this web page is the look of it could be wrong. Well, the way that it looks is decided by the CSS. Now here I've put it in the head section, but later on, after this tutorial, we'll be putting CSS in its own file. So one of the things that are pretty typical is a lot of my students will forget to put a semicolon. So every one of these property and value pairs should have a semicolon at the end. And these are curly braces here. So I have this rule, and this represents the body of the rule from that curly brace to that curly brace. And a curly brace is not a parenthesis. So I see a lot of people that do that, where parentheses, if you're new to this, are not the same thing as curly braces. So let me go ahead and put this back in. Okay, so these are curly braces, not parentheses. And I should say not square brackets either. So a square bracket would look like this. All right, so those are square brackets. That's not it either. Okay, So let's go ahead and validate this CSS. It should validate just fine. Oops, wrong button. Save. And I'm going to go over to the W3C's CSS validation service. And this is very much the same thing. Now, under more options, I'm going to validate this at CSS level 3. So this means the most current version as of this video recording. So I'm going to go ahead and validate it with level 3 CSS, check it, and I got the congratulations, no errors found. So that means that my CSS is good. I got the green light here. Okay, so next, let's break some of this. Let's put in, for instance, ABC for height, which means the value is wrong. And let's take the semicolon off of this one. And what else can we do? Let's misspell width down here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to rerun this page and check it. And I found 3 errors. First of all, height has too many values, or values are not recognized. So I can't use that as a value. So that's not allowed. So one thing I might do if I have this kind of error is I would tell my students that either fix the value, or if you don't know what to put, then you should go to the reference guide, go to CSS, and look up what you're trying to fix. So what we're trying to fix here is the height attribute. So if I copy this and I go over to the reference guide and then search for it, so I just did a find real quick. There it is. I click height, and down here I can select these as values, or I can put in a number like 100 pixels. So I would have to do something like that to fix it. Okay, so I'm going to put this back as 100%. All right, I'm going to save it and go back to my page that it's validating. So I fixed line 10. So let me rerun this. Line 10's fixed, but I still have line 16 and line 21 that have a problem. Line 16 has a value error. Display attempt to, needs a semicolon. All right, so it says here, need a semicolon. So I'm going to go ahead and add the semicolon at the end of display block, save it, and then I would rerun it. So I'm going to go ahead and check it again. All right, that error went away, and I'm just left with line 21. So line 21, property WDTH doesn't exist, so I misspelled width. And again, if I didn't know what property to put there, I need to find what I'm looking for in the reference guide. So line 21, I just need to fix the misspelling. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to rerun the page. So I'm going to go ahead and click check, and it says congratulations, no errors found. Okay, so right now our page has passed its structural test with the HTML checker and the CSS test, which is how it's going to look. So the next thing to do is to check the JavaScript. So let me go ahead and pull up. I'm going to shrink down the style, and I can shrink down what's mostly in the body and look at the JavaScript. So my JavaScript is down at the bottom, and I'm going to copy all of this. And the first thing that I would do is I would put it into something like JS hint. All right, so I've already pre-pasted this in here. And over here it says there's only one function in this file. It takes no arguments. The function contains 7 statements. And don't worry about this last line. But for now, it doesn't have any errors. So let me make a few. I'm going to take this semicolon off, for instance. And it says line 9 missing semicolon. So this one is kind of instantaneous. It shows me the problems as I paste this code in. Or perhaps I misspell true. Undefined variable, line 15, TRE. All right, so this will quickly tell me if I've made any spelling mistakes. However, it doesn't really pick up any logical errors. So two things can happen when I'm writing JavaScript. I could have a syntax error, which means I've spelled something wrong or used something the way it shouldn't be. And this should be able to catch it. Another one that's very similar to that is JSLint, which I've already pasted into here. So if I scan that code, it gives me basically the green light down here that nothing seems to be wrong. However, let me take a semicolon out and I'll show you, scan that through. It says line 13, column 44. That means the semicolon that I just took out needs to be replaced. So this one's very similar. I guess I use this one a little bit more because I like the fact that it does more with warnings over here, whereas JSLint is very strict. It makes you put in these things like use strict so that it interprets it with a stricter sense of rules. Okay, so I would use one of these to find out if you've typed something wrong. But then you're going to have to debug the web page if it's got anything beyond that. So I can go over to here and I can bring up what are called the developer tools. Now, one way to get there would be to click the stack like in Chrome, go to More Tools and click on Developer Tools. But I tend to use the keyboard shortcuts. On a PC, you'd push Control-Shift-I. On a Mac, you would push Command-Option-I. All right, so that brings me up to the developer tools for this page right here. And right now this could be a little overwhelming to you, but the first place I would go is the console. And right now you can see that the console doesn't show anything. It's blank. So let me break something in the code. And let's say right now I'm going to misspell this. I see students do this all the time. JavaScript is case sensitive, so get elements by ID all lowercase is an error. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I'm going to rerun the page. And here under console, it told me uncaught type error. Document.getElementID by ID is not a function, and it's on line 61. So as you get used to writing web pages and whatnot, this could tell me immediately that I misspelled getElementById because it's not a function of document. So I could fix that pretty immediately. If I didn't know what to do, another place I would go is to sources. And then I would put in these things like breakpoints. Now here I have a breakpoint on line 68. All I have to do is click it and it highlights it. And here's where I could see how it has the squiggly line here up above. I can fix that and keep debugging. But let me get back to breakpoints here. Let me go ahead and fix that problem. I'm going to undo those changes, save it, and rerun the page. And basically it's going to say paused in debugger on line 68. Let me raise this up so you can see it a little bit better. And here's what I can do. I can run this web page in slow motion. Now up here, right before it paused, it said hello web design class exclamation point. On the very next line, it's going to replace that with web design is fun. So watch this text up here in the window change from hello web design class to web design is fun. And the way that I do that is there are advance buttons right here where I can advance another line. So right now the line that I was on changed the background color from that light gray to the cornflower blue, or it's called lavender I should say. And then It still says hello web design class. That's because this line hasn't executed yet. It will as soon as I push this one more time. So I'm going to click it one more time, and there is the text change. All right, so if I went past that, I'm going to go ahead and run it again. Web design is fun. It returns to this function. I click through this, and is it blue? No, it's not blue. And it's going to change it back to lavender when I advance. So now it goes back to lavender. And then it's going to return this text right here from web design is fun. You can see it appear on the page. And I click this, and it goes to hello web design class. So here I'm watching the page line by line execute. Another thing that you can do, and I have already done this one time, let me take this out. I have a variable in here. I actually have several. I've got these three variables. The word var means variable. I have bg, h1, and is blue. Let's make a watch over here. If I click in watch and I type is blue, I have to hit the plus button, my bad. Is blue, see it detects it right away. I'm going to auto-complete that and hit enter. I auto-completed the typing with the tab key. Right now it says the value of is blue is false. So I'm going to go ahead and keep advancing this, and you can see it's watching the variable. It just turned to true. And I could watch this again. All right, now it's paused, and the is blue is true. On the next line, it's currently executing line 69. So now when it goes to line 70, it's going to go to false when that concludes, which is right now. So there it is. It switches over to false. All right, so the watch is a handy little tool, and then you can put in breakpoints by simply clicking a line, and it turns blue. Another thing I can do is down here in the console, I can type a number of things and see what it does. Like for instance, the page is running right here, so I could say h1 dot inner HTML. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. Equals hello world. And behind my text here, it changes. So let me push play, and you can see how I changed the text up there, down here as well. Oops, I clicked off of the page. Okay, another thing that I look at in here is the call stack. And later on in the class, when we have a bigger JavaScript file, you'll see multiple methods being called here, and basically this helps you trace your steps. Okay, so those are my most commonly used tools to help solve my problems. And here is that complete list one more time. The reference guide from W3 Schools, the validator service for both HTML and CSS, and then my JavaScript tools are both JSHint, JSLint, and the browser development tools that are embedded in something like Google Chrome.